trust me!
You already destroyed everything. I am just leaving.
4 years married to Amanda, and I genuinely believe we had our crap together. Sure, we weren't some fairy tale couple posting Instagram stories every 5 minutes about our perfect love, but we were solid. Or at least that's what I kept telling myself while watching my wife transform into someone I barely recognized. It all started innocently enough, or so I thought, because apparently I'm about as sharp as a bowling ball when it comes to reading obvious signs. Amanda landed this new position at her marketing firm, working directly under Blake, this hotshot executive who looked like he stepped out of a Men's Health magazine cover. The guy had that whole, I definitely use product in my hair and own more than 3 suits vibe going on, but hey, good for her, right? Career advancement and all that American dream BS. The first few late nights seemed legit. Big presentation coming up, client demands, the usual corporate circus that keeps the lights on and the mortgage paid. Amanda would come home around 9, maybe 10, looking tired, but talking animatedly about strategy sessions and brainstorming marathons with Blake. I'd heat up her dinner, pour her a glass of wine, and listen to her decompress. Supportive husband material right there. I should have gotten a damn medal. But then 9 became 10, 10 became 11, 11 became, don't wait up, honey, we're really in the zone here. And suddenly, every single project at her company apparently required round-the-clock attention from my wife and her dreamy boss. What were they doing over there? Solving world hunger? Curing cancer? Nope, just selling overpriced skincare products to suburban moms. But apparently that required more dedication than NASA's moon landing. The changes were subtle at first, which is probably why it took my dense A so long to connect the dots. Amanda started paying attention to her appearance in ways she hadn't since we were dating. New dresses that never saw the inside of our apartment, let alone a dinner date with me. Perfume that smelled expensive and definitely wasn't the stuff I bought her last Christmas. Hair appointments every 2 weeks like clockwork. She looked amazing, don't get me wrong, but it stung like hell knowing none of that effort was for the guy sharing her bed. The worst part, those late-night Uber rides home. I'd hear her phone buzz with notifications, see Blake's name pop up with messages like, "Car's here," or "Thanks for staying late again." Real professional stuff. Clearly nothing suspicious about your married employee's boss personally arranging her transportation at midnight, right? I mean, what kind of paranoid psycho would read anything into that? My friends started giving me those looks. You know, the ones. Part pity, part dude, seriously? Clara, Amanda's coworker and supposedly one of her closest friends, would get this uncomfortable expression whenever I'd casually ask if the whole team was pulling these marathon hours. "Oh, well, you know how it is with big projects," she'd stammer, avoiding eye contact like I'd asked her to solve calculus. "Real convincing, Clara. Your poker face needs work. Even my brother Daniel, who usually minded his own business and stuck to safe topics like sports and complaining about his ex-wife's alimony payments, felt compelled to stage an intervention. We were grabbing beers after work one Thursday, and he just laid it out there with all the subtlety of a freight train. "Tyler, you're blind if you don't see what's happening." "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, though my stomach was already dropping like a stone. "Come on, man. Amanda is working late every night with Prince Charming, coming home looking like she stepped off a runway, and you're sitting here acting like this is normal. Wake up." But I didn't want to wake up. I wanted to be the cool, trusting husband who didn't turn into some paranoid stalker checking phone records and demanding receipts. I wanted to believe that my wife of 4 years wouldn't throw away everything we'd built for some office romance novel fantasy. I wanted to trust that the woman who promised to love and honor me meant those words, so I played the part. I smiled when she kissed me goodbye before another emergency strategy session, nodded understandingly when she explained how Blake really valued her input on the Morrison account, pretended not to notice when she started keeping her phone face down during dinner, or how she'd suddenly developed an urgent need to shower the moment she walked through the door. The excuses kept piling up like dirty laundry. Client emergencies that only she could handle, presentations that required her specific expertise until well past normal human bedtime, team-building exercises that apparently happened at 11 p.m. on weeknights. It was like watching someone construct an elaborate house of cards, each lie balanced precariously on the last, waiting for the inevitable collapse. Meanwhile, I'm the chump, heating up leftovers alone, watching Netflix by myself, going to bed in an empty house because my wife is apparently the only person in the tri-state area capable of handling whatever crisis Blake's company was perpetually facing. The loneliness was eating me alive, but I kept telling myself this was temporary, just a busy season. things would go back to normal once this project wrapped up. Except there was always another project, another deadline, another reason why Blake absolutely needed Amanda's undivided attention at hours when most people were home with their families. While my wife was busy playing corporate Cinderella with Prince Blake, I was getting my own fairy tale offer. Except this one actually involved real money and didn't require me to pretend I was blind. Gregory Martinez, my boss for the past 3 years and a straight shooter who looked like he'd stepped out of a 1950s business manual, had been dangling this Seattle opportunity in front of me like a carrot on a stick. The first time he brought it up was during one of our quarterly reviews, right around the time Amanda's late nights were becoming a regular Tuesday through Thursday affair. Gregory leaned back in his leather chair, the kind that probably cost more than my car payment, and dropped the bomb with characteristic bluntness. "Tyler, I'm going to cut to the chase here. Corporate wants you in Seattle. Regional director position, overseeing the entire West Coast operation. We're talking a 65% salary bump, company apartment overlooking Elliott Bay, full relocation package, and enough responsibility to make your head spin in the best possible way." I nearly choked on my coffee. 65%? That wasn't just a raise. That was life-changing money, the kind of cash that could pay off our student loans, maybe even let us think about buying instead of renting. But before I could even process the numbers, my brain went straight to Amanda mode. "That's incredible, Gregory, but my wife's got her career here, her family's all local, and she's really building something with her current company." The words came out automatically, like some kind of programmed response. Good husband Tyler, always putting his wife's needs first, even when she was probably planning her next late-night strategy session with Mr. Perfect Hair. Gregory gave me this look, part disappointment, part, "Are you kidding me right now?" He'd been in corporate long enough to recognize when someone was making excuses, and he wasn't buying my supportive spouse routine. "Tyler, let me be clear about something. Opportunities like this don't grow on trees. Hell, they don't even grow in greenhouses with perfect conditions and daily fertilizing. This is the kind of position people spend decades working toward, and they're offering it to you at 31? You sure you want to pass this up for someone else's comfort zone?" But I did pass it up, like an absolute champion of self-sabotage. I smiled, shook his hand, and told him I was flattered, but couldn't make that kind of move right now. Gregory looked like I just told him I preferred root canals to promotions. But he nodded and said he'd keep the position open for a few weeks, just in case I came to my senses. That night I went home to an empty apartment. Shocking, I know, and tried to imagine telling Amanda about the offer. In my fantasy version, she'd be excited, maybe even proud that her husband was being headhunted for such a prestigious role. We'd spend the evening talking about our future, about the adventures we could have in the city, about how this could be the fresh start we didn't even know we needed. Reality, of course, had other plans. Amanda strolled in at 11:47 p.m., looking like she'd been styled by a team of professionals, smelling like expensive perfume and somebody else's cologne. When I mentioned the Seattle opportunity, carefully, like I was defusing a bomb, she barely looked up from her phone. "That's nice, honey. But you know I can't just abandon everything I've built here. My career is finally taking off, and Blake says I have real potential for advancement. Plus, Mom would literally have a heart attack if we moved that far away," Blake says. Those 2 words were starting to make my eye twitch. When did my wife's boss become the oracle of career wisdom? When did his opinions start mattering more than her husband's? A month later, Gregory approached me again. This time, he wasn't taking no for an answer quite so gracefully. "Tyler, I'm going to be straight with you because I like you, and I'd hate to see you make a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life. The company is restructuring. This Seattle position isn't just a promotion anymore, it's a lifeboat. The regional offices are consolidating, which means your current role might not exist in 6 months. You can either take the golden parachute to Seattle, or you can update your resume and hope someone else appreciates your talents as much as we do." The subtext was crystal clear. Take the job or start job hunting in a market that was about as friendly as a pack of hungry wolves. But even with that tool to my head, my first instinct was still to consider Amanda's feelings. How could I uproot her life? How could I ask her to leave her blossoming career with Blake, her marketing firm, just because my job was disappearing? I asked for another week to think it over. Gregory agreed, but I could see the frustration in his eyes. He was offering me a chance to run with the big dogs, and I was acting like he'd asked me to relocate to Mars. That week was hell, Every night, Amanda came home later and more distracted. Every morning, she left earlier and more dressed up. I felt like I was living with a beautiful stranger who occasionally shared my bed and split the utility bills. Meanwhile, Gregory's offer sat on my mental desk like a blinking neon sign. Escape route available. Terms and conditions apply. I started doing the math. The salary bump would mean financial security I'd never experienced. The apartment in Seattle was worth more in monthly rent than I currently made in 3 months. The career trajectory was the kind of thing that opens doors for decades. But every time I got excited about the possibilities, I'd picture Amanda's face when I told her we were leaving. I'd imagine the fight, the tears, the accusations that I was being selfish and impulsive, so I turned it down a second time. Gregory didn't even try to hide his disappointment. "Tyler, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I've never seen someone work so hard to sabotage their own success. Whatever's holding you back here, I hope it's worth sacrificing your future for, because that's exactly what you're doing." His words stuck with me like a bad song you can't get out of your head. Every time Amanda texted that she'd be late again, every time she came home smelling like someone else's life, I heard Gregory's voice asking if it was worth it. Friday evening, the end of another week of watching my marriage dissolve in real time, while I sat on the sidelines like some kind of emotional bench warmer, Amanda was in our bedroom preparing for what had become her weekly ritual, getting dolled up for another urgent project with Blake. The sound of her hairdryer mixed with the notification pings from her phone created this perfect soundtrack of betrayal that I'd become way too familiar with. I was sitting on the couch, staring at my laptop screen where Gregory's latest email sat open like a digital ultimatum. "Final offer expires Monday morning. Need your decision by then." 3 months of turning down the opportunity of a lifetime because I was trying to be the supportive husband to a woman who couldn't even be bothered to lie convincingly anymore. The hairdryer shut off, and I could hear Amanda moving around the bedroom with that focused energy she used to reserve for special occasions with me. Date nights, anniversaries, my birthday. Back when those things mattered to her more than whatever the hell she was doing with Prince Blake every night after normal humans went home to their families. She emerged from the bedroom looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. Black dress that hugged her curves in all the right places. A dress I'd never seen before, naturally. Hair styled in those loose waves that took her an hour to perfect. Makeup that could have been done by a professional. And that perfume. The expensive stuff that definitely wasn't in our bathroom cabinet. "You look nice," I said, testing the waters. "Hot date with Blake again?" She didn't even flinch, just checked her reflection in the hallway mirror and adjusted her earrings like I'd asked about the weather. "It's not a date, Tyler. It's work. Some of us take our careers seriously." That little dig hit exactly where she intended it to. Some of us take our careers seriously. Like I was some slacker who'd been coasting through life while she climbed the corporate ladder one late night, meeting at a time. "Actually, speaking of careers," I said, closing my laptop and standing up, "I was thinking maybe we could grab dinner tonight. There's that new Italian place on 5th Street you mentioned wanting to try. We could talk about some changes coming up at my job." Amanda's phone buzzed. Blake's name lit up the screen with a text that probably said something earth-shattering like "cars outside" or "ready when you are." She glanced at it, then at me, and I watched her face cycle through emotions like she was running diagnostics. "Tyler, Blake needs me tonight. This Morrison account presentation is Monday, and if we don't nail this, it could cost the company the contract. I can't just abandon my responsibilities because you suddenly want to play house." Playhouse. That's what she called me, wanting to have dinner with my own wife. My marriage had officially become a game of house, and apparently I was the only one still playing. "Amanda, you've been working late every single night for 3 months. Weekends, too. When exactly are we supposed to spend time together? When am I supposed to matter in this marriage?" She rolled her eyes, actually rolled her eyes like I was being some kind of needy child asking for attention during grown-up time. "Tyler, this is what success looks like. If you don't trust me to work late with my boss, if you can't handle me having a demanding career, then maybe we shouldn't be together." There it was, the nuclear option, delivered with all the casualness of someone ordering coffee. Maybe we shouldn't be together. She said it like it was my fault, like my inability to trust her midnight office marathons with Mr. Perfect hair was the problem in our relationship. I felt something shift inside me, like a switch being flipped or a door being slammed shut. For months, I'd been twisting myself into knots, trying to be understanding, trying to support her career growth, trying to ignore every red flag waving in my face like a matador's cape. I'd been so busy being the perfect, trusting husband that I'd forgotten I had other options. "You know what, Amanda?" I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "You're absolutely right." She blinked, clearly expecting me to backpedal into apologies and reassurances. The smile that started spreading across her face was pure satisfaction. She thought she'd won, thought she'd successfully guilt-tripped me back into my role as the compliant husband who didn't ask uncomfortable questions. "We shouldn't be together," I continued, watching that smile freeze like a glitch in a video game. Her phone buzzed again. Blake, no doubt wondering where his favorite employee was. But for once, Amanda wasn't reaching for it immediately. She was staring at me like I'd just started speaking Mandarin. "What did you just say?" "I said you're right. If I can't trust my wife working until midnight every night with her boss, if I'm such a burden to your career success, then we definitely shouldn't be together." I pulled out my phone, found Gregory's email, and hit reply. My fingers moved across the keyboard with more certainty than I'd felt in months. "Gregory, I'll take the Seattle position. Can start in 2 weeks. Thanks for your patience." The send notification sounded like a bang in the silence of our apartment. Amanda's face went through several expressions at once: confusion, disbelief, anger, and something that might have been panic. "Tyler, what are you doing?" "I'm taking a job in Seattle. Regional director, 65% salary increase, company apartment overlooking Elliott Bay. Remember the opportunity I turned down twice because I thought my wife's happiness was more important than my career?" Her phone buzzed a third time. This time she didn't even glance at it. "You can't be serious. You're going to throw away 4 years of marriage because you're having some kind of jealous breakdown?" "I'm not throwing anything away, Amanda. You already did that. I'm just finally accepting reality instead of pretending that my marriage isn't a joke and my wife isn't screwing her boss." "I am not." "Save it. We both know what's happening here. The only difference is that I'm finally done pretending I don't know." Her phone rang. Blake's ringtone. She'd given him his own special sound because of course she had. She stared at it like it might explode, then looked back at me with something approaching desperation. "Tyler, you're being ridiculous. You can't just—" "I can, and I am. Have fun at your meeting tonight. Try not to work too hard." I walked into the bedroom, pulled out my suitcase, and started packing. Behind me, I could hear Amanda's frantic, whispered conversation with Blake. Could hear the reality of her choices finally crashing down around her. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The sound of my suitcase zipper cutting through the silence was like a period at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. 4 years of marriage, and it all came down to this: me folding clothes while my wife had a panicked phone conversation with her boss/side piece in the living room. "Blake, I can't come tonight. He's lost his mind. He's packing. He says he's moving to Seattle." Her voice carried that edge of hysteria that people get when their carefully constructed house of lies starts collapsing in real time. I kept folding shirts, pants, the good suit I'd bought for our anniversary dinner last year, the one where Amanda spent half the evening checking her phone for urgent work messages. Everything fit surprisingly well into 2 suitcases, which probably said something depressing about how little I'd accumulated during our marriage, or maybe how ready I was to leave it all behind. Amanda's conversation with Blake continued in hushed, frantic tones. I caught bits and pieces. "No, you can't come over here. He knows, Blake. I think he knows. This is a disaster." Yeah, it was a disaster, all right, just not for the reasons she thought. I moved to the bathroom, grabbing my toothbrush, shampoo, the electric razor she bought me for Christmas because apparently my face wasn't meeting her standards anymore. Funny how all these little details suddenly made sense when viewed through the lens of my wife is cheating on me with her boss. By the time I emerged from the bathroom, Amanda had hung up and was standing in the bedroom doorway looking like someone had just told her Santa Claus was a lie and the Easter Bunny had gambling debts. "Tyler, stop. Just stop for a minute and think about what you're doing." I am thinking. For the first time in months, actually. Turns out my brain works a lot better when I'm not trying to convince myself that my marriage isn't a complete sham. She stepped into the room, her perfect hair slightly mussed from running her hands through it, her makeup starting to smudge around the edges. The transformation from magazine cover gorgeous to desperate housewife was almost impressive in its speed. "You can't just throw away 4 years like this. Over what? Some paranoid delusion that I'm cheating on you?" "Paranoid delusion?" I laughed, and it came out harsher than I intended. Amanda, you've been working until midnight every single night for 3 months. You dress like you're going to Fashion Week just to sit in conference rooms. You smell like men's cologne when you come home, and your boss personally arranges your late-night transportation. If this is a delusion, it's the most logical one in history. Blake is my mentor. He's helping me advance my career. God, Tyler, why can't you just trust me? Trust. She wanted me to trust her while she was doing everything short of sending me a PowerPoint presentation titled, How I'm Cheating on My Husband for Dummies. Because trust goes both ways, Amanda, and you haven't given me a single reason to trust you in months. Hell, you haven't even tried to be subtle about it. I zipped up the second suitcase and set it next to the first one. 2 bags. 4 years of marriage reduced to 2 pieces of luggage and a growing sense of relief that scared me with its intensity. Where are you even going to stay tonight? Hotel. Gregory's arranging temporary housing until the company apartment is ready. Gregory knew about this? Gregory's been trying to save my career while you've been destroying my marriage. Yeah, he knew. Amanda's phone buzzed again. Blake, no doubt wondering if the coast was clear for their regularly scheduled programming. She glanced at it, then back at me, and I watched the exact moment she realized she had to choose between dealing with her imploding marriage and keeping her boss happy. She chose her boss. Of course she did. I have to. Blake's waiting, and this presentation really is important. Sure it is. Don't let me keep you from your very important work. She grabbed her purse, checked her reflection in the mirror one more time, and headed for the door. But she stopped at the threshold, turning back with what I assumed was supposed to be her final guilt trip. Tyler, I'll cut back on the late nights if it bothers you so much. We can work this out. You don't have to run away to Seattle. Run away? Like I was some scared kid fleeing the scene instead of a grown man making a strategic career move while escaping a toxic marriage. Amanda, the only thing that bothers me is that you think I'm stupid enough to believe your lies. Have fun with Blake tonight. Try to keep it professional. She left. Actually walked out the door to go spend the evening with her boss while her husband packed up his life and prepared to move across the country. The symbolism was so perfect, it almost hurt. 3 months into my Seattle renaissance, I was living the kind of life that made me question why I'd ever lived anywhere else. I'd closed major deals, found an incredible apartment with a view of the Sound, and was walking back to the office after lunch when I spotted her. Amanda, standing outside my office building like some kind of ghost from my past, except ghosts usually have the decency to stay dead. She looked rough. The polished magazine cover version, who used to spend 2 hours getting ready, had been replaced by someone who looked like she'd been sleeping in her car and using gas station bathrooms for primping. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had that desperate energy people get when their world collapses. Tyler, we need to talk. No hello, no acknowledgement that showing up at someone's workplace unannounced after they'd moved across the country might be considered psychotic behavior. Just straight to the demands. Amanda, what the hell are you doing here? I flew up this morning. We need to talk about us. About our marriage, about what we're throwing away. The audacity was almost impressive. She was talking like this was some mutual decision instead of the natural consequence of her screwing her boss while turning my personal life into office entertainment. There is no us, Amanda. There is no our marriage. You made sure of that when you decided Blake was more interesting than your husband. Against every instinct, I agreed to coffee. Not because I wanted to hear her explanations, I knew exactly what had happened, but because some masochistic part of me was curious to see how she planned to spin this disaster. We went to a Starbucks 2 blocks away. Amanda ordered some complicated drink because, apparently, even in the middle of her personal apocalypse, she couldn't just get regular coffee like a normal human being. Tyler, I made a mistake. A huge mistake. But it wasn't what you think it was. Really? Because what I think is that you spent 3 months having an affair with your married boss while making me look like an idiot to everyone we know. Which part of that is incorrect? She flinched like I'd slapped her. Blake and I, it was complicated. He was my mentor, and he made me feel important, like my ideas mattered. You were always so busy with your own stuff, and I felt invisible in our marriage. My own stuff? You mean like the job I was considering leaving for a massive promotion that you convinced me to turn down twice? That stuff? I didn't know about Seattle until... You didn't know because you never asked. You were too busy planning your next late-night strategy session to give a damn about my career. She started crying then, the kind of calculated tears she'd always used when she wanted to end an argument without actually addressing the issues. "I thought you'd always forgive me," she whispered. "I thought you were too passive to ever actually leave. I took you for granted, and I know that was wrong. But people make mistakes, Tyler. 4 years of marriage has to count for something." There it was, the truth she'd been dancing around. She'd been counting on my passivity, banking on the fact that I'd be too weak or too loyal to call her on her BS. I'd been her safety net while she explored other options. "You're right, Amanda. People do make mistakes, but what you did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. You chose Blake over me every single night for 3 months. You chose to lie to me, to humiliate me, to treat our marriage like an inconvenience. But I choose you now. I'm here, aren't I? You're here because Blake dumped you when everything fell apart. You're here because your backup plan moved to Seattle and you're scrambling to find someone to pay your bills. This isn't about choosing me. This is about damage control." She was sobbing now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort her, no residual love. "What if I'm pregnant?" she blurted out, playing what she thought was her trump card. I laughed, actually laughed out loud while my soon-to-be ex-wife claimed to be carrying my child. "Amanda, we haven't had sex in 2 months, and before that, it was maybe once every few weeks when you weren't too tired from your work commitments. If you're pregnant, congratulations. It's either the second coming of Christ or Blake's problem." Her face crumpled, and I realized she just admitted to lying about something that could have changed my entire life. I needed you to care. I needed you to fight for me. I did care, Amanda. For 4 years, I cared more about your happiness than my own success. I cared right up until the moment I realized you'd never cared about me at all. Walking away from that coffee shop felt like closing the final chapter of the worst book I'd ever read. I had a life to get back to, a real life with genuine opportunities and relationships with people who didn't think loyalty was a character flaw. Life has a twisted sense of humor, and nowhere was that more apparent than in the cosmic comedy that unfolded over the next few months. While I was building my new life in Seattle, Blake's world was crashing down like a house of cards in a hurricane. Through mutual connections, I learned that Blake's affair hadn't just cost him his reputation, it had destroyed everything. His wife had hired investigators, discovered company resources being used for personal activities, and taken him to the cleaners in their divorce. Both he and Amanda had been fired when the extent of their workplace misconduct came to light. Amanda had to move back with her parents after losing her job and apartment. Blake was working for a mid-tier agency now, his reputation in tatters, treated like a pariah by former colleagues. The man had become a cautionary tale about workplace affairs. 6 months later, I was thriving. Better apartment, better job, better everything. I'd met Rachel at a bookstore. She was an architect with an honest laugh and the revolutionary quality of being exactly who she claimed to be. Our relationship was built on actual trust and communication, foreign concepts after years with Amanda. When Amanda's sister tried reaching out months later saying Amanda was in therapy and wanted another chance, I felt nothing but peace. I'd chosen myself over toxicity, and it was the best decision I'd ever made.